Shields up, Iron Breakers. Rurikhan here, coming at you with another First Impressions video, and today we're going to be taking a look at Evolve for the PC. Now, 2K was kind enough to send me over a preview code so that I could give it a look and tell you guys my opinions on it, even though I can't really give the game a score, which is fine, because to be completely honest, I don't give games scores because I find that to be somewhat ridiculous, but that is neither here nor there. So the code that I had access to was something that is going to be very close to the final version of the game, with I would say with probably the exception of a couple of balance changes and whatnot. So let's talk a little bit about Evolve. As you guys no doubt have noticed by now, this video is going to be in post commentary, and that is because there is simply so many different game modes and whatnot to talk about that I didn't want it to have to, be focused on the action whilst trying to deliver to you guys my opinion on Evolve. So let's get started. What is Evolve all about? Evolve is an asymmetrical multiplayer game. What this means is that there's going to be someone who is going to control a monster, and there's going to be 4 other players who will control the hunters. So the game very much revolves around the concept of 4v1. Now, you can also play against bots if that is kind of your thing, which was actually something that I felt was very, very good and very, very necessary if you expect to prolong this game's shelf life. Because let's face it, if we see something in terms of multiplayer that is akin to what happened with a game like Titanfall, for instance, which a lot of people played it at the start, and then it kind of dropped off quite a bit in its player base, at least you can still do the PvE things while having your friends and whatnot and fight off against monsters later down the line, which, I mean, maybe for some people that is not as important, but to me I see that as a very important feature indeed. The game can be played solo or cooperatively against AI, or obviously in full multiplayer if that is your thing. Now, full multiplayer, the biggest challenge I kind of see with it is going to be keeping things fresh. However, I have to say, playing the game with the number of matches that I've made and whatnot, the very first time I played it, I felt the game would really needed a little bit more polish, a little bit more optimization, but the next couple of times that I've played, I've actually quite enjoyed it. It was actually really fun. Even playing as a hunter or as a monster, because that was something that kept stuck in my head the very first time that I heard about the concept of Evolve. Was like, who the hell is going to want to be a monster against 4 other players? And basically it is actually a lot of fun being the monster and smashing other players to bits. It is just really, really fun, but I don't even know how else to put it. It is just flat out fun. Now, being the monster changes the gameplay dramatically, because when you're playing as the hunters, you're basically always in first-person mode. I don't think you can actually switch to third-person mode, and you're going to be fulfilling a specific role in a team. So the team is going to be compromised of 4 elements when it comes to the hunters. One of the elements is going to be the trapper, which is going to have some means of tracking and trapping the monster, slowing it down, something along those lines. Then there's going to be a medic, which obviously, I mean, that is self-implied, is going to heal your team. There's going to be a support character, which will depend on the character that you are playing, because there's several hunters within the subclasses. So, like, for instance, within support, there's at least 3 different kinds of supports as of right now. As a matter of fact, the footage that you guys should be watching, I think, is going to be the tier 3 support, which is the last support character that you have access to. Or if you're watching the monster footage, you're going to be watching the Wraith, I think. I'm not sure. I'm still not sure which footage I'm going to be showing, but yeah. The support character will vary wildly depending on which of your supports you actually pick. For instance, if you pick Hank, which is one of my favorite characters, you actually have access to an orbital bombardment as well as a shield for your teammates, whereas if you pick someone else like Bucket, you're going to get a rocket launcher, and you're going to get a skill that allows you to launch a piece of you, which becomes this camera to try and see if you can find the monster and stuff like that. So support, again, will deal some damage, but its main focus is going to be supporting the group. Beyond that, there's going to be Assault. Now, Assault is going to be the damage dealing class, obviously. It is going to focus just on outputting damage. At least I've only played Markov at this point. There's just a lot of characters to play, and I just don't have enough time to really play all of them. So there is quite a bit of diversity when it comes to fiddling around and creating your own team. But as I've mentioned, we have medics, we have assaults, we have supports, and I'm mentioning one which for some reason right now I can't remember. Oh, there's the Trapper. Medic, assault, support, and Trapper. And I believe that at this point I've mentioned pretty much all of them. So those are your 4 classes for the Hunters. Whenever there is a group being formed, there will always have to be one of each. You can't like take 2 assaults and 2 supports, at least at this point in the game. I'm not sure if that is something they plan on changing, but I highly doubt it, because that would make it a lot harder to balance the game around, I don't know, maybe some people will be like, oh, we'll just take 4 Hanks and just nuke the crap out of the monster instantly with orbital bombardment. Although that sounds like an actual pretty bad idea. But anyways, beyond the roles of the Hunters, you also have the Monster. Now, the Monster is going to, once again, vary wildly depending on the monster that you are. Currently, the version that I played of the game had 3 monsters, those being the Goliath, which is very much a brute monster that just is like Hulk smash and smashes through everything. Then there is the Kraken, which is a flying monster that is more about ranged attacks and, you know, keeping its distance and hovering from above and trying to throw out mines and lightning and stuff. I haven't played a lot of Kraken because I actually had it locked. I've only recently received the code in order to unlock all of the characters, and I use that to play a little bit of the Wraith, which, if I'm to be completely honest, the very first times I played against a Wraith, I was just, this monster is just broken, because the monster would flat out kill everyone and you'd be wondering what the hell just happened. It was that bad. It was really messy, and I believe there were even some statistics not so long ago that indicated that the Wraith monster had like a 70% win rate or something, which is just like completely ridiculous and unbalanced as you can imagine. Now, having said that, like I said, some of the things that are going to be happening before the game actually releases are going to be balance changes, so it is to be expected that those are constantly going to evolve. Ha 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 ha, I'm so funny. Those are going to be constantly evolving as the game moves forward. Otherwise, I mean, people are going to find some kind of a weird meta, and it's just going to be that until the end of days. Now, there's also been a lot of controversy in terms of this title when it comes to DLC, because the developers have stated the game was made from the ground up to support DLC and yada yada yada, and there's just tons and tons of, how should I put this? There's tons of ill will towards DLC at this point, and I can't really blame people, and when you make statements like that, you have to be careful. Now, granted, there's also been articles that have been put forth defending the guy who said it, because they say he's not really a media PR type of person. He's just one of the developers, and that is kind of how he says things, and whatever, he doesn't really filter himself, and that is very dangerous nowadays, particularly with all of the YouTube people like myself and whatnot, even though I personally don't jump after you know, how should I call these, sensationalist stories. I personally try to keep it a little bit more down to earth for you guys, but there's basically a bunch of people that their money is in creating sensationalist stories in the industry, so when you say something like, my title was built from the ground up for DLC, people are obviously going to quote you out of context and just insult the crap out of you. I'm not sitting here defending the Evolve developers or anything like that, because to be completely honest, I'm not in the position to do so, because I've only played a little bit of the beta to get an idea and to report back to you guys. But from what I hear, they're going to allow the entire community to have access to all the maps. They're going to allow the entire community to play against the characters that they do not own, characters from the DLC and whatnot. So that is essentially not really a big deal, unless for some reason you're like, no, I want that specific hunter because he has that specific skill, and obviously they're going to try and get you to buy those hunters through DLC. But you can still play as a monster against those hunters, and you can still play as a hunter against the DLC monsters, as well as DLC maps and whatnot. So if that happens to be the case at the end of the day, I don't see a huge problem. I mean, DLC has just become a huge portion of the industry, so long as they don't push it too far, we will have to see. I mean, this is going to be one of those things. I mean, DLC these days is very much one of those situations where you have to look and see. For instance, I had a big deal. I was very disappointed with the way that Dark Arisen was handled, and at the end of the day, once I played through it, I was like, okay, so they didn't handle it very well, but the amount of DLC that was there actually kind of made up for that fact. So DLC is one of those things that you kind of have to wait and see, and I really don't feel that people can criticize like right at the start unless it's something ridiculous like let's talk about Dead Space 3 levels where you have 11 pieces of DLC day 1 plus microtransactions plus yada yada yada. Also, if you put microtransactions in Evolve, I don't think I'm really going to support something like that. But we're getting quite a bit off the trails from what I set out to do in this video, which was to tell you guys my personal opinion on Evolve. I liked it. I like playing Evolve, whether being a hunter or being a monster. I thought it was fun. However, I have to say, if you are a hunter, I would heavily advise you to play with friends, or at least play with people that you are able to communicate with through voice. Because being a monster, something that I've noticed is that whenever I was a monster, I don't think I lost a single match as a monster. Even against other players. I mean, the footage that you guys are watching in the background right now is actually against bots, because it's just, I've had some serious issues with matchmaking. I believe it's probably because the beta is focused around US, and I'm obviously based off of Portugal, so that could be the issue there. However, if the matchmaking is the same for everyone that I experienced in the beta, oh man, I'm just gonna say I hope that doesn't happen, because that would be really bad. But anyway, beyond the first beta that we played, we only had the very basic mode, which was Hunt, which is essentially the monster spawns at stage 1, and the hunters spawn in and they chase him down, and the monster has to run away, kill wildlife, eat wildlife, and evolve to stage 2 and eventually stage 3 in order to gain power and health and skills and armor, and then just beat the crap out of the hunters. That was the hunt mode, and in that mode, I always felt that essentially the monster had quite a bit of leverage because it could essentially run away most of the time and pick its fights and eventually just confront the hunters whenever it wanted to, because the monster is faster than the hunters. The hunters have to track the monster down, so unless they can predict the pattern that the monster is running in, it becomes very hard for you to actually catch up to the monster and force a confrontation. Now, there are ways to do so. There are ways to force a confrontation with a monster. It is just very hard in the hunt mode. At least that is what I've found. And this was with the Goliath, which isn't even the most agile of monsters. If you're talking about the Wraith, oh man, I've lost against Wraith bots. Like, that's how overpowered I kind of felt that particular character was. Now, however, something that I've noticed in this last version of the game is that there are a lot more modes that you can play. There's even this evacuation mode that you can play, which essentially has you fighting against several monsters over several stages, and the outcome of each stage influences the next one. So say, for instance, the monster has to destroy a power plant, and you have to defend the power plant and beat the monster. Say the monster destroys the power plant, then maybe the monster gains some kind of bonuses, like maybe now there's radioactive waste spread throughout the next level, and the players are going to have a hard time dealing with that because they're going to lose health or something like that. However, maybe the players were able to defend, in which case there might be turrets running around hunting the monster down instead. So things will vary dynamically as the game progresses. However, it is not as simple as that, because beyond that, if the hunters win too many matches, then they start giving the monster a couple of advantages as well. So the hunters get like advantages in the terrain, but the monster might get certain buffs to kind of even out the playing field, and it's not just so one-sided. They're trying to balance things out so that things don't just completely snowball out of control. Now, there is a progression system in place, which I am not a huge fan of, because it essentially hides a lot of stuff behind. It just kind of forces you to play, and it becomes a little bit of a grind. So let's say, for instance, okay, I want to play a tier 3 support. Well, you got to play support tier 1, and you got to play a bunch of matches with it, and you got to do well. And after that, you unlock support tier 2. You gotta play support tier 2, and you have to basically play a bunch of matches with that. And eventually you unlock support tier 3. And that's kind of the way it works. Same thing for the monsters. When you start out, you only have access to Goliath, and you have to do a bunch of matches with Goliath, and eventually you have access to the Kraken. It would have been nice to have more variety from the get-go. However, I kind of feel there's not that much there to begin with, so they're forced to kind of gate you through it. I mean, you would do 3 matches as a monster, and you would have played all of the monsters available at this time. Although I believe there's going to be an extra monster when the game comes out, at least I hope so, because if there's only going to be 3 monsters, I mean, I can see things being a little bit predictable. But yeah, Evacuation goes beyond hunt mode, and it adds a lot more modes in there so that sometimes the monsters will have the upper hand, other times the hunters will have the upper hand, and always one member of the team is going to be pressured to do something in these maps. And sometimes these things will favor monster, other times these things will favor the hunters, which is good in my opinion, because when we had the hunt mode, I kind of always felt that the monsters always had the upper hand. But again, that's just me. Now, is this game like something fun? Like I said, if you're playing with friends and you're the hunters team, yes, it's a lot of fun. If you're playing solo, I feel like the fun is more to be had in being the monster, because being in a pug, I think, is going to be extremely frustrating, particularly if you have people that are maybe playing the role of their characters for the very first time. That might be a big problem. Like, let's say, for instance, I'm playing Hank as support, which I know how to play, and someone is trying out the Trapper for the very first time. Now, the Trapper is an essential character for you to be successful on Evolve. Like, the Trapper needs to trap the monster down in order to slow it down and allow your teammates to actually inflict damage on it. It is particularly important for the support if I'm playing Hank, for instance, because unless you kind of ground the monster somehow, there's no way I can land my orbital strike. So if I'm playing with the newbie Trapper, that is going to become very, very frustrating, particularly if we don't have communication so that the Trapper can say, okay, I'm going to put down the arena now, and someone can say, oh, maybe it's not such a good idea because of this, maybe it's not such a good idea because of that. So voice comms, I feel, are imperative if you are playing the Hunters in Evolve. It is just a must-have. However, if you're playing the monster, it should be just fine. You just soloing, beating the crap out of the hunters, very, very satisfying. As a matter of fact, the very first match I ever posted onto my channel was me beating the crap out of the squadron, and that just felt so good. It just felt so good. Inclusively, especially the this part where I hit Hengist with a boulder in the face mid-air. I just love that. That was so good. But yeah, the game definitely has a lot of promise. Whether or not it is going to do well, I feel, is going to depend upon the community that surrounds it. So if you get a good community in this game and you get people on voice comms and whatnot, and you don't just get people that just want to insult your mother or stuff like that and tell you how much you suck, people who are actually willing to work together to achieve some kind of a common goal in teamwork, I feel it's going to be really fun. But at the end of the day, this is the internet, so I think Evolve has its work cut out for it. I'm really hoping that this game gets a good community, because I actually like what I've seen so far from Evolve. I've heard a lot of people say they don't like it because of X, Y, and Z. Me personally, I liked what I've seen so far. It was very frustrating the first couple of times I've played, particularly in hunt mode, because in hunt mode, like I said, I always feel the monster has somewhat of an advantage. But apart from that, once you put in all the other modes, as well as you include the fact that you can play solo or co-op with friends, I think the game has a lot of potential. Whether or not it is going to fulfill that potential, we will have to see. In case you guys are wondering if the Hunters Evolve as well, no, they don't. They can get a they can get bonuses from attacking some of the wildlife and whatnot, but the only thing that actually evolves are the monsters. And the monsters actually have skills and stuff like that you can invest points in. Me personally, I go for a very straightforward tactic. Like if I'm playing Goliath, I go like ham on in rock throw at the very start. I don't even use any other skill, just rock throw. Why? Because rock throw gives me a ranged attack, and Goliath already has a pretty beastly melee attack. Now, once I go into stage 2, I'm probably going to get the leaping attack because it's a gap closer. So I have range and gap closes, so it's pretty damn good. Once I get into stage 3, I go ham on the flame breath because, I mean, I'm not a big fan of that charging attack that Goliath has, and at that point I'm just like jumping around, breathing fire, throwing rocks. I'm just this unstoppable killing machine. The other monsters I don't have as much experience in. For this video I played a little bit as the Wraith, and like I said, the Wraith I still feel is pretty much broken. I mean, his abilities are just ridiculous. He can become invisible, he can summon a clone, he can do this supernova thing that just slashes people up super fast, and yeah. In terms of graphics, the game looks pretty good, except for that, again, I think I've mentioned this previously in a recent video for Dying Light, which is games seem to have this kind of like film grain on top of them nowadays, and I just have to say, guys, stop that. Just stop that. I mean, the game looks fine. You don't need film grain on top of it. I don't understand what the reasoning is behind it. It's like, oh, it's more cinematic. No, just don't do that. That and frame blending, which Evolve also had. I'm not sure if it still has it or not. But one of the versions that I played had a lot of like frame blending, which is just bad, okay? We want to see the way the game looks. We don't want to have all these like 130 filters on top of them, okay? There's some filters that make games look cool. There's other filters that don't. But anyways, that is going to be it for this video. Me personally, I've enjoyed my time with Evolve. The gameplay footage should give you an idea of what the game is like. And again, like I said, whether or not this game will succeed and whether or not this game will be good is going to very much depend on the community that spawns behind it. So if you're in doubt, I would advise you to wait and see how people are reacting to it after release, because that is going to be when it's going to be the most important. But right now, it shows a lot of promise. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Leave me all your comments, feedback, all the kinds of good stuff in the comment section below, and I'll see you in the next one.